Welcome to another Telltale Books video. My name is Greg, and I'm here to continue my H.G. Wells series, covering everything I can get my hands on by my number one favorite author of all time, H.G. Wells. This one, I am covering his 17th published work, published in March 3rd of 1894 in the Pall Mall Gazette, which Wells published quite a bit in this magazine. And it's titled The Triumphs of a Taxidermist. Now, I read this story in my copy of the Complete Short Stories of H.G. Wells. Now, if you go looking for this, there's none that are currently in print. You can't walk into Barnes & Noble and buy the Complete Short Stories of H.G. Wells. You might find some kind of H.G. Wells collection, but you're not going to find a collection of all of his stories currently in print in the bookstores. The best you can do is a used book, and this particular edition is the most complete of all of the complete short stories volumes that have been published by Wells. There are a lot of others, but none of those, they were complete at the time they were published, but a lot of stuff has been discovered since then. This book in particular has a whole section in the back of stories that had never been collected before. Mostly very early stories by Wells that had been dug up. Very early, very short. Triumphs of a Taxidermist is one of these really short early stories, although this one had been collected. It was originally collected in Wells' very first short story collection, titled The Stolen Bacillus and Others. I have it in here. It's also included in a book published it's been published over the years, but my edition is from 1993, titled 30 Strange Stories. But if you're looking for something that has all of H.G. Wells' short stories, this is as close as you're going to get. But here's the thing. After this was published in 1998 by Phoenix Giant Books in the UK, edited by John Hamilton, who was the president of the H.G. Wells Society at the time. So this is the authoritative book. But after this was published, a short story was discovered, and it was published in Argosy magazine, making this, unfortunately, another incomplete complete short stories of H.G. Wells. So if you're an H.G. Wells completist, you got to have all of his short stories. This is the closest you're going to get. If you get this and that issue of Argosy, which is available, even though it's a back issue, it's available on their website. And it's, the relaunch of Argosy in more recent years is a really good magazine. They've discovered lost stories by Steinbeck, and they just published a recent issue where they discovered a story by Rod Serling. Excellent magazine. So yeah, if you get this edition of the complete short stories, and it's only trade paperback, this one wasn't published in hardcover to the best of my knowledge. So the other hardcover editions that you're going to find if you do a search online for complete short stories of H.G. Wells, those will have fewer stories than this edition has. So anyway, that said, what is Triumphs of a Taxidermist about? Well, you have these two characters, and I have a terrible memory for names, so I don't remember names. I should make it a point to write them down all the time. But in this, you have one guy talking to another guy who happens to be a taxidermist. And this taxidermist is being quite honest and telling him all of his secrets. And this particular taxidermist has created some things that never ever even lived. He created some complete frauds and put them out there as if they were real animals that he had stuffed. Now, if you know anything about taxidermy, there are parts of the animal that have to be taken out and thrown away, like the eyes, so they're replaced with glass eyes. When you look at the work of a taxidermist, you're not seeing the animal's real eyes because they can't preserve those. They have to take them out and throw them away and substitute glass eyes in. And there's other things like that that taxidermists do that are fake, really. But it's necessary. They preserve as much as they can, but there's things they can't preserve. Well, this guy goes so far as to perpetuate frauds. Not sure why Wells wrote this. If he was just doing a character study, or if he was trying to indict the taxidermy profession for some reason. He might be. He might have been calling all taxidermists frauds. Or he might have just thought it was an interesting character and wrote this character study. It's a very short story. And just is about this one guy. So it could just be a simple character study. But sorry to say, as much as I love the work of H.G. Wells, I consider him to be my number one favorite author of all time. I just don't like the story. I'm not that interested in the taxidermist. The story is really short, it doesn't really go anywhere. I'm not sure if it's making any kind of point. I just don't care about it. It didn't draw me in. And I mean, and it's not that it's antiquated, it's that it's just not very interesting. But it is a very early work. I mean, H.G. Wells hadn't written, I think he had only written 3, maybe 4 short works of fiction and published them before this one. We're only at number 17. I've mostly been going through nonfiction articles. And of course, this isn't, for people that like Wells science fiction, this isn't science fiction or fantasy. I'm not even sure why it's in 30 Strange Stories, because it's not that strange of a story. It's pretty straightforward. So I can't recommend this one, unfortunately. It's one of the few H.G. Wells works that I'm going to say this about, that I think you should just skip it, unless you're just super diehard like I am and have to read everything. So this is the time when I say, have you read it? And do you agree with me or disagree with me? I want to hear, especially if you disagree with me and see something in this story that I'm not seeing. I'd like to hear about it. Leave it in the comments. And then come on back. Our next H.G. Wells is going to be another short story that was actually released to the newsstands on the exact same date, but in a different magazine. It's titled A Family Elopement. And again, it's not science fiction. But that'll be Wells's 18th work. I hope you'll come back and join me for that, and all the other stories and authors that we covered here on Telltale Books. Doing a lot of Stephen King right now. I'm stepping up my J.G. Ballard. I'm do a lot more J.G. Ballard just because he's another of my very favorite authors. I think he's very possibly one of the top 5 authors that have touched on the science fiction genre. Now, maybe even top 2 in H.G. Wells. I'm not sure if I'm willing to go that far, but Ballard is